Welcome everyone. This session is about leave a legacy you want to. Let me guide you through this session first. This session is divided into two parts. The major would be by our guest of honor, Shri B. Vijay Sen Reddy, enlightening us on the process of making a will. The second part would be the concluding part by C.A. Rajshri Jhawar, talking about estate and tax planning through a will. Welcome Rajshri to the White Aura.
Thank you.
We also have a very dynamic and a dedicated lawyer on board to carry out the proceedings of this session, Mrs. Sunita Atasmia. And now Rajshri will be introducing her to us.
Sunita is practicing advocate in High Court from past 8 years. She is dealing cases in civil and criminal law in appellate jurisdiction. She has been crowned as Mrs. Face of South in 2016. She has been crowned Mrs. India Most Enchanting Smile in 2018. She is also a soft skill and memory trainer. We welcome you, Sunita.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Rajshri. I feel privileged today to be given an opportunity to be the voice of today's participants and place their queries across to our respected dignitary on board. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Sunita. A lot of people here must be eager for this session, but I'm sure a lot of eyebrows raised. Oh, making a will. There has always been a misconception that if someone asks you to make a will, he or she is indirectly telling you that your end is near or is eyeing on your property. And we don't look at it with the right attitude. I'm sure today's session will be an awakening one. Once how to make a valid will and the consequences of not making a will be explained, all your apprehensions will disappear. A will is a sensitive topic to open up to. And we are greatly honored that Honorable Justice Shri B. Vijay Sen Reddy has stepped up to make us understand this legal miracle of making a will. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. May I proceed now, madam?
Yeah, and to start with, sir, I would like to, and then I'll just forward the session to Sunita. So here's an introduction about Sir by Rajshri.
Honorable Justice Sri B. Vijay Sen Reddy, born on 22nd August 1970 at Hyderabad. His father, late Justice B. Subba Sen Reddy, was a former Chief Justice of Madras and Kerala High Court and was also former Chairperson of AP State Human Rights Commission and former Lokyukta for the states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. His grandfather, late Sri B. Agga Reddy, was a renowned personality and was a former examiner of accounts, Jahangir administration in the erstwhile Hyderabad state. He passed LLB from Hyderabad Padala Rama Reddy Law College in 1994. He enrolled as an advocate on December 28, 1994. As an advocate, Justice Reddy practiced in all branches of law and appeared in High Court in large number of constitutional, civil, revenue, and criminal matters. He practiced as a private lawyer for more than 25 years and commanded good practice in revenue laws, land ceiling, tenancy, land acquisition laws, other local laws, and also on civil and criminal original side and appellate side, and appeared regularly in Hyderabad city and Rangareddy district civil, revenue, and criminal courts. He also appeared for several religious, charitable, and social organizations. He has number of reported cases to his credit. He was elevated as a permanent judge of the High Court for the state of Telangana and assumed charge on 2nd May 2020. He delivered lectures on records of rights and comparative study of Old and New Land Acquisition Act for the Young Lawyer Association, AP High Court, litigation practice, land reforms, civil procedure code, working of constitution, and many more.
Sir, your esteemed presence has honored our platform. We are extremely ecstatic to get this session on. To start with Sir, and then we pass on to Sunita to take the session forward. The pandemic, sir, the pandemic has left us clueless about the future, but life can be uncertain in many ways. Keeping the pandemic aside, ideally, what is the right time for drafting a will?
Yes, madam. Now, can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Madam Nidhi Buraria and Rajeshri Rati, and my past colleague Sunita Atasnia. All of you are founders, organizers, and moderator of this White Aura. I am very happy to be with all of you and giving me this opportunity to share my legal experience and also about my views regarding this will and nuances of the will. Now, will, when one refers to it in a common man's language, everyone knows what is a will. Will is a legal declaration of a person as to how his property is to be succeeded after his lifetime.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, the audio is very low.
Now, madam,
But still it is.
still,
Yeah.
actually, it is on the higher side. I don't know what's the technical problem. Now, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
Is it okay, madam, now?
Now
Yes,
it's
sir.
okay, yes.
Yes. So I'll again start from the beginning. In common man's language, you know, will is something which come into effect after man's lifetime. So whether a person is an intellectual or a person belonging to low social strata, under some circumstances, a person wants his estate to be distributed after his lifetime in a particular manner. Now, let us not go into this question as to what are the circumstances under which a person makes a will. I am sharing my views out of my experience as a lawyer and also out of my short experience as a judge. I've got 1 year experience as a judge. I was appointed during this COVID pandemic. I have completed 1 year in this pandemic. So you can call me a pandemic judge. So we have seen these unprecedented times. We have faced challenging times in the past more than 1.5 years. When a will is executed, the natural thought a person will get is he does not want his property to be distributed by operation of law. It is called unnatural succession. Natural succession, of course, if a person doesn't make a will, it will go as per his governing law. If he is a Hindu, Hindu Succession Act. Hindus include the Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. Then there are personal laws for Mohammedans, Muslims. Then succession law for Parsis and Christians is covered under the Indian Succession Act. These are the broadly governing succession laws in India. So these are the major communities in India. So let us not go into minute details about the subsects and other things. We are only concerned with the lecture on nuances on will. When you talk about succession, there are two types of succession. One is generally they say a person has died intestate. Intestate means a person has died without leaving any will. Testamentary succession. A person has died testate means he has left any will. What are the advantages of a will? Why does a person usually make a will? There may be instances of a person having wish to transfer his movable assets, immovable assets. There are some other rights like right of trusteeship. Suppose he is a member of an association. He is a member of one recreation club. He is a trustee in a temple. He is a trustee in a charitable institution. He is a trust. Then he is a shareholder, director in an association. It can be an education institution. It can be a company. So all these rights also right which is existing on the date when the testator has made this will, and also a right which will be accrued in future can be transferred under a will which will come into effect naturally after the death of the person. Usually when a will is made, doubts arise as to enforceability of the will. What is the difference between a will and gift? When comparison is made between a will and gift, one thing which strikes to our mind is a gift is a transferring present. During his lifetime, the owner of the property wants the property to be distributed then and there itself. It is a gift. But when the property he intends to transfer is after his lifetime, then that is will. That is a broad difference between a will and a gift. What are the advantages of a will? For a gift, the date when the owner transfers the property, he loses interest over the property. He is no more the owner. Of course, there are some gifts where conditions can be imposed. A person having transferred the gift, he can reserve for himself life interest in the property. Another aspect is about stamp duty and registration charges. So for gift, you have to pay stamp duty and registration charges, and as I informed you, the transfer takes effect immediately on the date of execution of gift. The title transfers on the day from the donor to the donor. But when it comes to the will deed, title still remains with the testator. Now, who is a testator? When you refer to a will, normally a word which comes to your mind is a testator. A testator is a person who makes a will. When you use these legal terms, your discussion and correspondence becomes easy. Again and again, you don't have to discuss that a person making a will or is the owner of the properties also. So that is the reason I am just giving you the definition of testator. Testator is a person who makes a will. So from here and after, I am referring him as a testator. Then, what is an estate? Usually, when you speak about wills, you refer to estate. You don't say property, mole property, shares, debentures, FDRs. You don't. You say estate. It covers everything. A person, a testator, may be having rights, assets, liabilities also. Everything cumulative is an estate. So that is how broadly the cumulative word of estate is used when there is a discussion about will. Then who is a beneficiary? Beneficiary of or legatee is a person who is getting benefit out of the will. Then who is a executor of the will? Executor, in simple words, is a person who is entrusted with the responsibility to implement the terms and conditions of the will. I am using a simplest possible word. A person who is given responsibility to give effect to the will, who is directed to implement the terms and conditions of the will. Then in some circumstances, there may be a nominee, a person who is given custody of that property to be used in particular manner, and he will be directed to distribute the assets and this estate. So for your benefit, again I will repeat, hope I am clear on who is a testator, what is an estate, who is a beneficiary, who is the executor, who is a nominee. You got it? Yes, thank you. Then, whether will needs to be registered or not. What are the advantages of registration? What are the advantages of non-registration? And at the same time, what would be the possible disadvantages of non-registration? If I can invite any comments from someone. Normally, registration gives some sort of authenticity to the document. But one has to understand there is no difference in legal parlance between a will which is registered and which is not registered. It will have the same value. Normally, you find when conventional drafting is made, whether it is a educated person or not, when he goes to a lawyer, he wants the will deed to be prepared on a stamp paper. He will prepare on a stamp paper, but he will not go for registration. Then compare that document prepared on a stamp paper with another same will which is prepared on a plain paper. Do you think there is a difference if it is not registered? I am talking about unregistered. There is no difference at all. Still, the person who makes the will, a person who prepares the will, either he can be a person with a legal brain like a lawyer, a person who might be having some knowledge like a document writer. You might have gone to a sub-registrar office. Sometimes the document writer, his preparation of a will deed, gift deed, sale deed will be much better than a lawyer, because that is his job. Every day he keeps on preparing hundreds of documents. So document writer is there. Some family members who are well versed with English language, they are also asked to give assistance in preparation of it. Unlike a sale deed, gift deed, mortgage deed, lease deed, which require some ingredients to be satisfied under the provisions of Transfer of Property Act. When it comes to will deed, It does not require any form or format. You can write it in any form. Normally, what you do when you execute a sale deed, you say, this deed of sale is executed by so and so on this date, so and so. By so and so vendor, by so and so vendee or purchaser. There is one format. Then what is required for a sale deed? One person is owner of the property, one person is intending to sell, another person is intending to purchase. This is the sale consideration, paid, received, so and so, possession, delivered. These are the basic requirements of a sale deed. But when it comes to will deed, how to begin? Is a title required? Do you have to give a nomenclature for the will deed? Not required. Do you require to prepare it in one particular format? Not required. You can write it in any form. That is the essence of it. So there, it does not have any format. Then, when will is prepared, some basic legal requirements are there. What are the legal requirements? A person who signs will or makes a will, usually you say he is making a will. When he is making a will, he has to either sign it or affix his mark. Affix his mark is putting his thumb impression. He might be in his last stages. He might not be in a position to sign. And olden days, they may not be in a position to affix their signature. So they have to affix or put thumb impression, or that is known as mark. Then one is he himself executing it, signing it, or alternatively affixing mark. Then another option is there. If he is not in a position to sign or affix his thumb impression, he can direct a person to do that job on his behalf. Normally, he is referred to as scribe. So, he will prepare it. He will affix on the dictation of the testator. So, there should not be any confusion. One is a testator himself signing or affixing his mark. Second is another person who is preparing it on the dictation of the testator or on the directions of the testator, signing or affixing. It has to be done in the presence of two witnesses. Two or more, or it can be more also, but minimum two is required. So when two witnesses are there in their presence, the testator has to sign or affix his mark. After that signature is done by the testator, then in his presence, two witnesses have to sign. Witnesses need not be present at the same time. They can come one after the other also. But they have to, this attestation is meant to ensure that the testator has signed this on that day in their presence. This is to acknowledge, and at a later point of time, if there is any dispute with regard to will, these two persons have to adduce evidence in the court that they have seen testator affixing it, and after testator affixing it, both of them have signed in the presence of testator. Then, what is the capacity of a person, capability of a person? Should the person be capable of making a will to make him capable? What are the ingredients required again? Now he has to be in a sound and disposing state of mind. What is sound and disposing state of mind again remains a very big question of fact. So in order to see that there is no doubt in future about this person's mental health status and also surrounding circumstances. A person might be having 5 children, but he wants to give his entire property to one child. Normally, other 4 children, they say that there is no question of my father, our father disinheriting ourselves. What wrong we have done? That's the normal thing. These are the normal doubts which are created after a person's lifetime. So, that is the reason, since registration is not compulsory, and generally a will deed is executed in secrecy. Some contents of the will deed, the testator does not want it to be disclosed during his lifetime. Even if it is registered, some people ensure that this will is kept in a sealed envelope and it should be opened after his death. There may be a choice of the testator informing his family members to about the execution of the will, or he may just say that he has executed the will deed, contents of which can be seen after his lifetime. So there is nothing for the testator to disclose on the date of will or on the date of registration that he has executed. He can always keep it in secrecy. Requirement of a person to be in sound and disposing state of mind. There are instances of a person suffering from mental illness. There are instances of person suffering from terminal illness. For example, a person undergoing cancer treatment. He might be taking chemotherapy shots. Under such circumstances, when a will is made and some of the family members are not happy with the will, naturally they will raise a doubt saying that this person was not in a good mental situation, he was not in sound and disposing state of mind. So these are the general controversies which arise after a person's lifetime. That is the reason always it is better a neutral person. A neutral person who is unconnected with the family affairs is made as a attesting witness. Usually your chartered accountant, your doctor, and your lawyer, anyone who is your well-wisher, whom you believe that he will execute the will to the fuller extent as per the intentions of the testator. Now, exemption. This is the two types of will. That is, one is a will which is called unprivileged. What I have explained you about 2 witnesses should be there and affixing of signature or thumb impression. That is an unprivileged will. There is another will known as privileged will. This is an exemption given to a soldier who is in a warfare or who is in an expedition. He need not have to take a signature of the attesting witness. So he is exempted from that. So generally, when we talk about will, we are talking about unprivileged wills. Now, next comes what are the properties? Many of you might be having doubt. What are the properties which can be transferred? Normally, you say bequeath. Bequeath means you are creating an interest in the beneficiary. That is bequeath. Bequeath is present tense. Bequest is a past tense. So, how bequest can be created and in respect of what properties? It can be movable properties, immovable properties, liquid assets, shares, right of management, personal assets. Yes, I gave you example of membership of a club. Then right to acquire future property, right in trusteeship, then shares in a company, then interest and share in ancestral property. Now, the most important thing is whether a person, usually will is made for self-acquired property, a person's personal property. What about his share in ancestral property? Can that be given by way of will? So that is covered under section 30 of Hindu Succession Act. If a person's right is there, as on that date, his right is determined. If he has got 1/6 share in the joint family or ancestral property, he can make will for that property also. Unless and until there is a claim of survivorship. If there are any other family members who have got claim. If share is clearly clear mark, he can make a will for undivided share also. But there should not be a dispute in it. So that is covered under section 30 of the Hindu Succession Act. When a person makes a will, the thing which surprised me as a lawyer, during my 25 years of practice, I have come across several wills. There were some people who made will imposing number of conditions. If my son has one son, he is 10-year-old. If his son becomes a chartered accountant, then property should go to him. Then after my grandson, if there is another son, then it should go to the great grandson. So the elders in our family, traditional families, mainly, I have to tell you, though it is a privileged communication, but let me be little liberal in saying that people from Rajasthani and Gujarati communities, many of them impose such conditions. Naturally, because they work hard, they develop business over a period of several decades. They do not want their property to be wasted. They do not want their property to go into wrong hands. So they impose number of conditions. Now what happens to these conditions? Are all these conditions valid? A person has got a big house. He thinks all his children should prosper in that house. He thinks after his lifetime, his children will be there, his grandchildren will be there. Then great-grandchildren will be there. Everyone should prosper. I have made everything. I have created wealth for generations and generations. I have earned. Even if my children do not earn, I have to ensure that this property doesn't get wasted. At least this business interest and business and assets and house is protected. That's a natural tendency of an Indian who works hard, who creates assets, who has a big family to bank upon him. And as a gratitude, as a reward to his family members, he wants to distribute his assets. There is nothing wrong with it. But there are some conditions which are too onerous to be performed. Now he says, after my son, the property should go to my grandson. That is okay. After my grandson, it should go to another great grandson. Suppose great grandson is not born, then so these are some things which are not in anyone's hand. The condition which is impossible to be performed, that condition becomes void. Then there are some other conditions like non-alienation. Father says, a gestator, this property should not be sold by my son. I am giving it to my son. After my son, it should go to my grandson. They should never sell it. My son should never sell it. So can you guess? Will such condition be valid? It is not valid. Condition of absolute non-alienation. Absolute non-alienation. He can say, if he has got 5 sons or 3 daughters, he can say, you sell it to my son or daughter. If you want to sell it to my son or daughter. He divides property into 5 shares or 8 shares. If one person wants to sell, he does not want, naturally, he does not want an outsider to purchase this undivided share. He can impose a condition that this undivided share should be purchased by other family members. That is a valid condition. There is no absolute restriction of alienation. Hope I made myself very clear on this. Condition of absolute non-alienation is void. If it not an absolute non-alienation, if it is not, then it is valid. As I have given an example, usually I give an illustration so that it is easily understood by everyone. So that's why I said if a person has got 5 sons and 3 daughters, each one is given 1/8 share in the property, and if he imposes a condition that specific share should not be sold to outsiders or strangers and it should be sold to the family members, that is a valid condition.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So there is a query which has been coming,
Yes.
that what is the right age for execution of a will? Because generally they say that when we are old age, we will execute a will.
Yeah, he has to be a major, that's all. He has to be major. A person has to be major, sound person. There is no right. Age is not a number for execution of a will. Age is not the criteria. Anytime he can execute. But what happens? There are some assets which a person might not perceive. Suppose his land is to be acquired. He does not know whether his land will be acquired or not. There might be a property which is in litigation. For example, court litigation is there. He does not know whether he wins or loses. There might be a property which is acquired, compensation is deposited. Again, there is a dispute with regard to. These are the properties where he has got interest, but he cannot transfer it immediately. Usually, what happens is, not that youngsters do not make a will. This is a common phenomenon in foreign countries, because people, by common experience, are found to have some suspicion about their longevity in foreign countries. There might be one legal heir. He does not know. Something happens, then everything will be in a confused state of mind. If one legal heir is there and he dies, it's very difficult. The property will go to whom if there are no legal heirs? It's known as bona vacantia. It will go back to the government. There is no claimant. That's why what happens, whether it is lawyer or well-wisher in a family, they ensure that even if he is an youngster, will is made. This is commonly there in foreign countries, in countries like UK, France, Germany. Everyone makes a will because they do not want to take a chance. A person, he might be young, but something may happen. For example, he may die in an accident. But when it comes to India, you will have many claimants here. Family members are there. Hindu law defines who are class 1 legal heirs. Class 1 legal heirs are immediate lineal descendants. Wife, children, class 1 legal heirs. If wife, children are not there, suppose a person is unmarried. Brother, sister. If brother, sister is not there, class 3, children of brothers, children of sisters. So it goes on like this. So in India, you don't have a problem. In foreign countries, there will be a problem. That's why they make wills at a younger age. Now, when it comes to India, that usually we have, this is a general thing. We do not know. Maybe after pandemic, youngsters will start having experienced tough times during last 1.5 years. Youngsters also may start creating a will.
Sir, is it necessary to appoint an executor under a will, sir?
Not necessary. It's not necessary unless and until it is complicated and a person thinks it will take some time and it involves some legal complications. It's not necessary at all. If it is 1 or 2 properties, it is not necessary at all.
So basically, for execution of a will, to make it more valid in the eye of law, if it is registered or unregistered, what are the basic precautions which we can take, sir?
Basic precautions you should take is the tenor of language. The language of the will should be as simple as possible.
Can we include preamble, sir, because it is made
You
for
can-
self-acquired property?
You can include preamble, but as I told you earlier, there is no format. You can just tell about your family background. You can say that I was born on so and so date, I did business, I was successful, so and so, I was married to so and so person, so on. And I was blessed with children. This is the normal thing. We have to go by some conventions and customs. If you go into unnecessary details, it will give lot of doubt. That is known as suspicious circumstances. Suppose a person had some health problem. He might have suffered a heart attack at one point of time. But at the time of making will, he is hale and hearty. In the preamble, he writes, I am a very healthy man. Which is avoidable actually. Because at the time of making will, as a matter of fact, he might be a healthy man. But the person who is not happy with the will, he may challenge it. So that is the reason will should be always simple as possible. It should reveal the true intent of the person who is making the will.
Sir, if a person makes a will and it is registered at one point of time, and after that he decides that he wants to make a new will, because will can be made n number of times during the lifetime of the testator.
Yes.
So if the last will is unregistered, and how to make it valid,
More authentic and valid.
more authentic, which is acceptable in the eye of law when we go for
Yes,
execution of that will?
as I spoke to you earlier, there is no difference between a registered will or unregistered will. One of the essentials of the will is it can be revoked at any point of time. So you can revoke a registered will, you can make an unregistered will. So subject to proof before a court of law, the unregistered will, latest will prevails over the earlier wills. That is one of the essential conditions of will. A person can revoke at any point of time before his death.
So it is, we should include the number of which the will is being registered. If we place that
Yes, that
in
is
the
always,
new will,
that is always better. When you write a new will, by default, the old will is cancelled. It is known as revocation. But it is always better. When you say that I have executed earlier will which is registered, it shall stand revoked. That will give some sort of value to the latest will.
sir, in joint family properties, basically in Maheshwari families and all, wife will not be knowing what are the properties in her will, but she will be having an intention that she should give whatever she has to her daughter, or whatever is her self-acquired property, be it Sridhana or whatever is coming from her husband. What is the procedure, sir, for executing a will?
Are you talking about wife?
Wife, sir, wife placed in a joint family property, because basically ladies will not be having an idea of what properties are there with them. So what is
the provisions of this Indian Succession Act cover that area also. Even when there is a mistake in description of property, today that lady has got 4 or 5 properties. Tomorrow you may get some more properties. There are some properties of which you don't have knowledge. You can say at the last, if you are able to describe these 5 properties of which description is available, you describe. Properties of which description you cannot make. For example, today you are 60 years.
Sir.
You survive for 80 years. From 60 years to 80 years, 20 years, you could have acquired a lot of properties. You may have had FDR of 50 lakhs or 1 crore. It might have become 2 crores. So interest might have accrued. You might be having mutual funds. You might be having LIC. You might be having LIC for which part premium is made. So there are some things which cannot be fully described. So these things can be taken care of by writing in the will that all my existing future assets, etc., shall stand transferred to so and so person after my death. These are the. A doubt can come to the institution. Suppose you go to the bank. The banker says, no, it is not clear. But ultimately, when you land up in court, and someone is objecting, your other family members may object, the banker may object. If it is a property, you may go to the municipal corporation. Municipal corporation will say, sir, this is not clear. Please go to court. When you go to court, the court will see the true purport and intention of the mind. If the mind of a person is able to be clearly revealed by virtue of contents of the will, the court will have to ensure that full effect is given to the intention of the person, in spite of some mistakes or description or misnomer. That is the benefit which is attached to the will. So a lady, as you wanted to know, she can always say that my properties which I have not included here, future properties, undescribed properties, everything. So I think
Nidhi, Mr. JP Singh is waiting for a long time. I think he
Yes.
has a query. Can we?
Yeah, so I'm just asking Mr. JP Singh to unmute himself. Yes.
Hello. Sir,
yes.
there is a practical problem involved with will. For example, if I have a will in my favor and a immovable property is in my favor, I can't take that will and go to the registrar office. They won't register it in my name immediately. I have to go to the court and then again go to the registrar office. Is there any easier way out, sir?
Actually, as you said, there is a unsettled thing. There is no authoritative pronouncement, any judgment covering that subject as of now. Actually, when a will is made, I am giving you examples of 2 situations. One is, there are no other legal ills excepting that person. Suppose one person who is having a will in his favor, he does not have any brothers and sisters. There is no person who can object.
Okay.
The registrar will ask you to go to court. That is
Sir,
one.
exactly, sir. Sir, another question. Yes, sorry, sir. Please continue.
I will continue. Then there are situations where you have a will in your favor, your brothers are objecting to it.
Okay.
They are objecting, of course, we have to go for probate or to declare will as there is no option, because the sub-registrar is not a person to decide your title. It is the court which will decide your title. But unfortunately, even when there is no objection by another legal heir, the sub-registrar or a banker will say, go to the court. That is a grey area. That is a grey area, unfortunately. It is there. That creates unnecessary strain on the people.
So there is
even-
another question sir, related to this, sir. For example, there was, sorry, can I speak, ma'am?
Yes, please.
There was a property in my mother's name. After her demise, already it was decided that my father will be the owner of this property. Then no will was made. And after my father's death, it came in my name. And even in that case also no papers done and it was not registered in my name. And now I want to give it to my son. So now what is the procedure, sir? It was not mutated in the court. No registration was done. Just orally it was being transferred from this person to that and that to that.
Was it registered in your mother's name earlier?
Yes, sir, it was.
So how many children your mother has?
One son, two daughters, three.
One son, two daughters. Your father is still there?
No.
See, you said your father, it was agreed that the property should go orally to your father.
Yes, sir.
But unfortunately, law does not recognize that oral transfer.
So what is the solution now, sir?
If your mother has executed will deed, the mother's
Yes.
property could have gone to your father. Your father could have become absolute owner. But that did not happen. So it remains a property of all the family members. It goes as per Hindu Succession Act. All three of you will get 1/3 share.
Okay.
Because by operation of law, that is the reason in the beginning of my lecture I said there are two types: testamentary, intestate. So your mother, whether you agree or not, died intestate without a will. So if your father was alive, it would have been 4 shares. Since your father died, it becomes 3 shares. And the example you have given, it was a decision of your mother to give the property to your father and father to yourself. It is not a valid transfer. Oral transfer is not recognized under law.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, if a will is not disputed by any of the legal heads, they are going for mutation or for accessing the bank lockers as per what is bequeathed to them under the will.
Yes.
But still they are not able to access it. Everyone everywhere in India, they say that probate is not necessary, but when we go, they are asking to get our will probated, let the probate be granted or letter of administration from the court of law. So what measures can we take, sir, to easily execute what will is given to us?
There is a lot of inconsistency in these procedures. Some banks are asking for no objection from other family members. Some banks, nationalized banks, for example, I have.
They are asking for legal aid certificate and succession certificates.
Yes, I will also tell you the difference between legal aid certificate, succession certificate, and probate, which are the most important things.
Sir,
A lot of confusion in the minds of people. Some banks, for example, I have the account in Canara Bank. Canara Bank is not insisting for any succession certificate. They are saying if other family members are giving no objection, it is enough. Sometimes they may be having a long history of relationship with that account holder. Then they don't ask. If you are a new account holder, then they say you get a probate from the court. Regarding probate of immovable property, there is no mandatory requirement under law excepting for 3 presidency towns: Mumbai, Madras, Kolkata, West Bengal. Excepting for these 3 presidency towns and Christians and Parsis, this will need not be probated for Hindus. But some slight confusion is there between a probate and a succession certificate. Usually succession certificate is applied for under section 370 of the Indian Succession Act when there is no will deed. When will deed is there, you go for probate. But ultimately legal effect is one and the same thing. Succession certificate is only for, please remember, it is only for movable properties. like FDR, shares, bank account, your gold in the locker, etc. Succession certificate is only for movable assets. For immovable assets, if will is there, if anyone is challenging, you may have to go to court, but there is no mandatory requirement. As Mr. J.P. Singh said, now you go to sub-registrar, he says you get a certificate from the court. Certificate from the court is nothing but probate. Certifying that it is a valid document is a probate. So, RBI guidelines also say in case of some accounts where there is a joint account, in case of a joint account, if another person gives no objection, he will transfer. That is consistently followed. I think most of you know that. In case of a joint account, there is no objection. Usually for transferring that amounts under the joint account in favor of the legatee, if another joint account holder is giving no objection. But if it is an individual account, banks usually are asking the beneficiary to get no objection from other family members or legal aids.
Sir, what happened if an unregistered will was made but was suppressed by one of the family members? Later, during the course of the legal battle, no will was found. They say that will is not executed. Once a settlement is arrived, the will comes to light. So, what is the remedy, sir?
Will, you know, this, as I told you about the ingredients of the will, that is prescribed under section 63. What are the essentials of valid will? Person executing will, two witnesses, etc. I said. Now, when you come to proof of will, you have to fall back on section 68 of the Indian Evidence Act, how it has to be proved. A person has to come to the court. Out of two witnesses, there can be two or more witnesses. Out of two, any witness, one witness can come to the court. And he has to say that he has seen the testator signing the document.
So basically, we can challenge the settlement also, sir. In the court that the
No.
will is there.
You are saying, your question is, will was not disclosed. You did not see the light of the day.
Correct, sir.
That remains a question of fact. Now, whether
After the family members have reached the settlement, suddenly one of the family members finds that their parents have executed a will which was suppressed by this person and these settlements were made. Now we can take that will and challenge the settlement.
Yes, will can be challenged, but please keep in your mind, when the person who has a will in his favor, that means he is known as propounder of will. Burden will be on him.
To prove the genuinity of the will.
Yes, genuineness of will. Burden will always be on him because he is the beneficiary. He has to prove it. You don't have to disprove it. First, burden will be on him. And how do you disprove? How do you create a doubt about genuineness of will? It can be a fraud, coercion, undue influence, surrounding circumstances. Now you say father and mother were never allowed to meet any of the family members. Suspicious circumstances. So that way you can prove that this is not a genuine will. There was some undue influence and coercion exercised on the testator or testatrix in making this will. Anyone can challenge it at any point of time. Now,
So there is one.
yes.
Sir. Sir, there is one question which is coming up, sir. What do we do that our estate is easily transferred to our heirs? That implies that is it advisable always to make a will to avoid disputes between the family members after the demise of the testator?
See, it is a very difficult question to answer. It all depends upon the maker of the will.
Sir.
If I am there, I will tell you, I'll place myself in that situation and answer. If there are two kids, earlier people used to have number of children. So, by preference, some people used to think that "Arey, before my death, I have to do something for my daughters. I have to do something for my younger son who is not settled. Some preferences will be there for that person. So for that reason, he will try to create more estate in favor of younger child or daughters or elder child or one or two sons who have helped him more, who had been loyal to him. And he will write like that. He will say, you might have also seen as a lawyer in many cases.
Sir,
They do not want to give more share to some children because they have got preference for one son only. So if they give more share to one son, one daughter-in-law, grandson, etc. So that is known as disinheriting others. They may be given share or they may be disinherited. They say that they have not been loyal, they were not following my instructions,
sir,
they were never affectionate, they did not take care of my health, etc. So
sir.
they may say that. So in such circumstances, situations vary. But when you have one or two kids,
Sir,
it doesn't matter. Better if you want to transfer, give it in your lifetime. But when you are transferring it, the problem is your title is divested. You no more continue to be the owner. If you want security in your lifetime, you create a will so that the property will be with you throughout your lifetime and it gets transferred after your lifetime. When you
sir,
give,
what?
you have,
Sorry, sir.
as I told you, it should be as simple as possible. And to create a will or not to create a will, it's one's own choice. It's one's own choice. One cannot say why it should be prepared or not. There are some peculiar situations. Even a extraordinary, intelligent, extraordinary intellectuals who have made wills which were not registered. I am talking about an army major. I am talking about a former minister who did not want will to be kept open.
So what is preferable, sir? Like a settlement deed or gift deed or will deed? What is more preferable for a person to execute with respect to his properties?
If there are number of properties are too many, it is always better to go for a settlement deed or a gift deed if there are too many properties. If there are definite properties, 2 or 3 or 4 properties, see, a person has to be secure during his lifetime. If he or she, either husband or wife, they might be 70, 75 years, they may be living for another 10 years or so. There has to be some security, some fear will be there in the mind. Suppose they give everything to their children during their lifetime, they will not be left with anything.
Sir,
Usually, why a person keeps more than one property for himself? He has one house, but he wants 4 houses, 5 houses. It's only a social security.
the question, sir.
Yes. So in foreign countries, everything is taken care of by government. They are welfare states, like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, England, Canada, etc. Everything is taken care of. The health, insurance, etc. Everything is taken care of by the government to the larger extent. But when it comes to India, see, rich people, they have got a fear that tomorrow something may happen. We have to keep something in storage for us. Something we have to reserve for us. So that one judge, a great judge said, to protect yourself from tyranny of government, you have to create an estate.
Estate.
So some estate is there, that itself is a moral support for you. So when you create an estate, so I'll finish this in 1 minute. It is a very ticklish issue. One is you want to complete it everything in your lifetime. But a elder family member in a traditional Hindu or Sikh or Jain, all of them are broadly called Hindus under the Hindu Succession Act. A father always fears that if he is transferring the property during his lifetime, he will not be respected. So he wants to reserve something for himself and for his wife. Similarly, wife also, they do not want to transfer everything. So settlement deed, gift deed, settlement deed, there is a very narrow difference. One is gift deed where it is done by one person to another person, family member or outsider also. Gift settlement deed and gift deed, not much difference. But gift settlement deed usually is a terminology used for transferring property under a gift to a family member. Gift settlement, family member. Then there is another settlement deed where you can blend the properties. You can say one property you acquire in the name of father, one in the name of mother, one in the name of son, one in the name of daughter-in-law. But you have got 10 family members. You blend all the properties. You blend all the properties. You settle it among all the family members. That is one of the classic examples of settlement deed. But essentially, just like a gift deed, all the properties get transferred on the same day when the document is executed. Title is divested. Will it will get operation after the death of that person.
So with regard to trust, sir, many of the people are having a query how a trust property or a trust can be created and how we can safeguard an unborn child if we want to give anything. I want to give something to my son's son who is unborn. What remedies or what precautions we can take, sir, with regard to trust in a will?
Trust, one has to understand there are two types of trust. Trust is included under is one act known as Hindu Religious Charitable so and so Act. Institutions are of two kinds: religious, charitable. Religious, anything to do with temples, mosques, church, etc. So, endowment, under Hindus, you say it is endowment. Muslims, you say waqf. Christians are not covered under that endowment act. Charitable, nothing to do with the religion. You can create a trust. You can create for one community. Similar fashion, it can be a family trust. You can create from family trust. You gave an example as to how that person, unborn child, should be protected. These are the general trusts which are created in foreign countries. If you see places like, I will give examples of England, Germany, and France, trusts are created for family, and you will be reading newspapers regularly. Queen Elizabeth, they have a trust. The trust is created in such a manner to see that their social status, family status, economic status is not disturbed for generations. So, the younger sibling who has shifted to America, I don't know whether you have read newspapers or not, he has given up that benefit. Why he is saying that I am no more living as a prince or future prince. So he has given up. So that is there actually in the trust deed. It is there, and the government also accepted that. So the legacy continues like this. Here also you can create a trust for unborn child. When independence was attained by India, is provinces and provincial states. I don't know whether you know about it. Nizam state, Punjab state. Nizam state, when it merged with India in 1948, that is Hyderabad state, which is now Telangana. Many of the privy purses act, the properties were taken over by the government. kingdom got merged into state. Now elected representative is there, no? Now state has taken over the assets. So when state takes over the assets, what should happen to the erstwhile rulers who had a certain style of living? So they have created trust. They have created family trust, education trust, jewelry trust also. Jewelry trust. So that can be created and it's a valid thing. You can also take exemption under section 80G of the income tax. Many of the family members now, these people who want some fund to be earmarked for youngsters, especially girls. We do not know in future, education has become very expensive. So they are creating family trust. I had been lawyer for one family trust, which is known as KPR Trust. So they have acquired a lot of properties and entire assets are used for the benefit of children. Many of their kids have gone, family members have gone abroad.
So, Sunita, there are many quick questions on the chat. So if we can ask Sir those questions.
Yes. Sir, there is a question regarding liquid assets, mainly shares, sir. If the holder dies intestate, then how much time does it take to get a succession certificate from the court, and whether huge 7% of value payable as a court fee?
So that is a painful thing. Succession certificate is an expensive affair actually. I don't know why it is so expensive, but unfortunately it is so. Until up to 1 lakh, it is 5%. Above 1 lakh, I think it is 6% or 7%.
7%.
6 or 7%. So it is an expensive affair. It is a law. There is a law for that. So it is not in anyone's hand.
So what is the status, sir, if there is Hindu undivided family properties, and what if the Karta is no more?
There is nothing like removing a Karta. Karta is the elder family member who manages the property. So nothing like Karta is removed. A person has got any dispute with regard to management, a minor also through guardian, example mother or any other family member can file a partition suit. When there is a dispute between family members, you have to file a partition suit. Without claiming partition also, you can file a suit saying that the Karta is wasting property, investing in wrongful expenditure. You can go and get an injunction. So any family member, I hope many of you know what is co-parcenary right. A co-parcener is a person who gets interest in the property by birth. So by virtue of section 2005 amendment, earlier amendments are also there. There is no point in discussing such amendments because 2005 central amendment is there with effect from September 2004. There is a cutoff date. Daughters are given share and interest in the property on par with son. So there is no difference at all. Whether it is daughter or son.
Okay.
So there's one question here. They are saying like people ask us to make the will, but throw some light on will reading. Is there a process called will reading?
Madam, I did not. Will? You said
reading of the will.
As I informed you, the will does not require any format. It doesn't require any format at all. It can be in the form of a letter. One thing I have to inform you, earlier in 1960s, 70s and 80s, the lawyers who prepared the documents used to prepare the documents in a very condensed form. It used to be 2 or 3 pages and it used to be a simple content. Now over a period of time, Maybe people have become complicated, lawyers have also become complicated. So, will deed is prepared in 10-15 pages. The bigger it is prepared, legal brains involved in preparation, the more complicated. That's the problem now. It has to be simple, very simple as possible.
And there's one question like if the children are NRI or green card holders, what are the laws if parents are in India?
There is actually there is a misconception. People think that people in foreign countries cannot inherit. It is not like that. There is a RBI regulation. I am not sure about the quantum, but it is, I think it is 10 crores. Exact, I do not know the currency conversion. It might be 10 crores. If an NRI want to purchase a property above 10 crores, that is one thing. Another thing is agricultural purchase. Property, if he is purchasing agricultural land, he has to take permission from RBI. So far as succession inheritance, there is no bar. There is no difference between a person staying in India or as an NRI. Anyone can succeed to the property and he can be a beneficiary under the will.
Okay. Can executors be witnesses also?
Yes, madam.
Can executors be witnesses also?
Executors can also be witnesses. Yes.
Okay. And what if a will is challenged, objected later by the family members during the distribution of assets?
There is no other alternative, madam, excepting to go to the court. As I said, it can be a probate or to declare will as valid. There is no other alternative. When it is under challenge, we have to go to the court.
So I think Sir has answered quite a few questions, and and in such a simple way, you have, Sir, explained everything. One straightforward question that one person is asking is like, what's the best? What can be a simple? How can this whole process be simply explained in a simple way? Like, how do we transfer all our assets or everything to the heir without any problem? How simplified can you make it?
Madam, as I explained you, the difference between gift and will deed. Gift, if you want to transfer, you are transferring in the present situation. That is known as transfer presenti. In case of a will deed, there are some advantages, there are some disadvantages, but one has to be positive. One should not think too far. One should think about the next generation. You should not think about second, third, fourth generation. You only think about the next generation. What happens in the next 30, 40, 50 years? Don't think too far because many COVID situations may come in future. So we do not know. We do not know our longevity. We do not know about certainty in life. So one should only think about the next generation. That is the first and foremost thing I am telling you out of my experience.
Okay. So one thing is like, can a nephew or niece also claim right in uncle's property or asset?
Madam, I have informed you. If class 1 legal heirs are not there, nephews, nieces will get. They are class 2 and class 3.
Okay.
They will get it.
And can the son-in-law claim a share in the ancestral property?
Who, madam?
Son-in-law.
Son-in-law?
Yeah.
No, he can never.
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 Okay. Okay, sir. So can you enlighten us anymore, or we can just?
No, if you want, you can go ahead. No problem. There was one lady who was raising hand. Please later ask.
Which question?
One Miss Giri, someone was raising hand. I have seen it.
Okay, 1 minute.
Sunita ji, I am able to see many of my friends here. Mr. Ramakant Dinani, many of my known persons are also here. I am very happy that they have taken time on Sunday to watch me. Namaste.
you coming, so
बोलिए रमाकांत जी.
one minute, I'll just unmute.
Sir, we enjoyed the talk, sir, and we got ourselves fully knowledge. We gained, sir. We are very thankful,
Many
sir.
kinds of you intellectuals like you have also participated. You have interacted with more than 10-15 lawyers, great lawyers. So you might be having more knowledge than all those lawyers, I feel.
Yes, sir. Also, 4-5 judges, and one of them is now Supreme Court judge also, sir. Very nice of you, sir. And we have given the talk with a good examples also, sir.
Yes.
Easily understandable, sir. Sir, regarding this equity shares, anybody without will, if he goes away, then the succession certificate.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just,
That's already discussed earlier. That is a problem, actually. Huge.
Like court fee is some 7%, it seems, sir, very high.
That's what I was telling. It's an unfortunate thing. I faced that as a lawyer, and just before I became a judge, my client had to pay 30 lakhs for transfer of shares. It was too huge.
But there is no upper ceiling, sir. I was told some 25,000. Thereafter, it is some ceiling.
I am told there is one second. I am told in Karnataka it is somewhat less. In Karnataka, in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, it is on the higher side.
So our High Court and our Chamber of Commerce will represent to the government, sir.
Yes, you have to represent, because see, a person, when you are making a will and there is, you don't have to pay stamp duty registration. Unfortunately, for probate and succession, you are paying more money than that. Lot more.
And court is very time consuming also, sir. Time also.
Actually, they should give a lot separate seniority for those. Anyhow, I am on the judicial side. Let me see what I can do. As a lawyer, I faced trauma.
Yeah.
Because these are the matters, succession matters should not go for a long time. There should be. Yes, madam.
Yeah, sir. So we have one more short session to be continued. So we'll just continue with the next guest.
Yes.
So before that, we would like to give you a vote of thanks.
Yes, madam.
So lots of gratitude to the Honorable Respected Judge Shri Vijay Sen Reddy, the very soul of the judiciary, the protector of truth as well as justice in our nation. We extend our regard, admiration, and gratitude for your precious time. Your prudent words and effective advice on the will has been explained in such an appropriate and simplified way that any layman can now swear by, मैं गीता पर हाथ रखकर कसम खाता हूं कि अब मैं विल बनाने में पूरी तरह सक्षम हूं, which means I am now fully equipped for making a flawless will and leave a legacy of my choice. The White Aura hopes that after this session, everyone enjoys the legacy they belong to. To be really honest, sir, your introduction was very impressive. How you first mentioned the achievements of your grandfather and father and how you took the baton from them and continued the legacy of maintaining the constitutionality of such a huge democracy, being the true face of justice for our nation. In a way, you did give us a live example of passing on the legacy. We want to thank you enough we can't thank you enough for your graciousness. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam, for your kind words, and this has been a very good Sunday and very educative, and I am enlightened with all your presence, and your kind words will motivate me to participate in similar lectures, and I hope to get back to you in a short time. Thank you for inviting me, and I shall.
Thank you, sir. The pleasure is all ours. And if you can just wait for a few more time, we have one more small short session coming. Rajshri Jhawar CA, Rajshri Jhawar will be taking us through the session. So Rajshri, can you come?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wish you all a very happy Sunday morning.
Yeah. So here's an introduction about Rajshri by Rajshri Rathi. One second.
We welcome you, Rajshri Jhawar. A short introduction about her. She is a commerce graduate from HR College of Commerce and Economics, Mumbai, and a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. She is a qualified system auditor and a forensic auditor and is currently pursuing a diploma in insurance and risk management. CA Rajshri Jhawar is practicing chartered accountant with more than 15 years of experience in the statutory audit of various public sector banks, public sector companies, and insurance companies. She also has a vast experience in the audit and taxation issues faced by the individual firm and private limited companies under the various laws of land. So we welcome you, Rajshri.
Thank you, Rajshri. And I take the opportunity to thank White Aura for such an enlightening session. I don't have words to express the practical knowledge which was gained by, the session taken by Honorable Justice Sri Reddy sir. And I'm sure it's going to help me a lot while guiding my clients. Thank you so much, sir, for your guidance.
Okay, Rajshri, can we continue?
Yeah. So we are going to talk about estate and tax planning. So let us first understand what is estate planning. Before I go, audible, is it all okay?
Madam, can I take leave?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for honoring us. Thank
Sorry
you
for
for
the
a very
interruption,
good
madam. I'll take leave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
So what is estate planning? Estate, in the famous words of Benjamin Franklin, there are only two certainties in life. One is death and the other is taxes. And as rightly pointed out by somebody in the chat, the third could be the death on taxes in the form of inheritance tax or in the form of estate duty. So estate planning is basically the process of it's creating a master plan for the management and distribution of your wealth in the event of your death or disability. Through estate planning, we can decide that how, whom, and when to transfer the control and ownership of the estate in the most cost-effective manner. Well, the statistics say that almost 90% of Indians do not make a will. And on a lighter note, by the cost of the succession certificate, the kind of amount to be paid as court fees, I think it is quite necessary for all of us to awaken to the fact that we need to make our will and we need to do our estate planning. It is ironical, while we work all our lives, we are, unlike the Western counterpart, we Indians work all our life and believe in passing on a legacy to our loved ones. But when it comes to actually writing down a will or making an estate plan to ensure that our assets are received by our loved ones in the way that we want them to, in the most cost-effective manner, we seem to be lazy about doing that. So what would be the need or what would be the reasons for making an estate plan? What could be the areas which we could address by making a good estate plan or writing a good will? One important aspect in today's pandemic times, in the light of a recent Supreme Court decision, that where a company is going bankrupt, personal guarantees can be invoked. Before I talk more about it, let me give you a background. Normally, when we do business, we like to do business in the form of companies, be it private limited companies or limited liability partnerships, to limit our liabilities, which can be unlimited in case where business goes wrong, when there are losses. So the reason why we formed our businesses in the form of a LLP or in the form of a company is to avoid unlimited liability. But the problem is, when you go to a bank to take a loan, 9 out of 10 times the bank insists on taking a personal guarantee. They will not lend to a company or an LLP without taking a personal guarantee. And in the light of the recent case law where the Supreme Court has decided that the banks can invoke personal guarantee, and that means that even when I'm doing business in the form of a company or in the form of an LLP, when I have given my personal guarantee, entire property, all my property can be actually attached by the bank for the repayment of the loan or for the repayment of the creditors. Given this scenario, estate planning can be very handy or can be very helpful to ensure that we do our asset protection in the form of creating a trust. That could be one of the reasons why we create an estate plan. Another reason could be where you want to create, you have minor children. Now, in the pandemic, we have seen a lot of children lose their parents, where both the parents have expired, or, there's no family member. We are living in an era where we have nuclear families. We have one children, then our children also has one child. So there's practically nobody around us who can act as a guardian. So in such circumstances, I think in today's current nuclear era, it becomes all the more important to have an estate plan in place, especially when we have minor children, so that we ensure that whatever wealth we have accumulated should be correctly be available to the child as he's growing up until the time he attains his majority. The wealth should be well protected. Another reason for the estate planning could be where you have children with special needs, or relatives whom you want to support or whom you have supported. For an example, there could be an aunt, or there could be a friend of your father's whom you have been supporting throughout your life. But you cannot be assured, or you cannot expect that your children will feel the same once you pass away. So another way of ensuring that what you have been doing throughout your lifetime for that particular relative or that particular friend or maybe a special child, you ensure the interest of these people by creating an estate plan and by creating a trust in favor of these people. Another important aspect could be life insurance. Now, most of us have term insurances. Some of us have, a term insurance or an insurance of a huge amount. Normally we take an insurance so that our family can survive even if we are not alive, by using the amount received from the insurance. But it may so happen that our beneficiaries, maybe our wife, our spouse, or maybe our children, are not, educated enough or capable enough of handling such a huge corpus when received at one go. There a life insurance trust could be created where you could actually dictate that when, on the event of your passing away, and when that insurance amount is received, how it is supposed to be utilized, where it is supposed to be invested, for whose benefit it is supposed to be invested, so that that corpus will be protected till the time either your minor children have attained majority, or even the major children have attained a certain age of maturity, maybe their mid-30s or 40s. Yeah. So these could be the different scenarios which will be which you can cater to with the help of estate planning. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, what is estate planning? I said it's a distribution and transfer of ownership of assets in a cost-effective manner. So I'm going to be sharing a few tips with you so that when you're preparing your estate plan or when you're writing down your will, you can ensure that you are doing a bit of a tax planning in the process, so that the beneficiaries receive it with the least amount of tax impact on them. Okay. So there are essentially two tools which can be used. One is the HUF, which is the Hindu Undivided Family, and the other is in the form of a trust. So I'll try and explain in brief what is an HUF. Some of you may already be well aware about what is an HUF, but for the benefit of those who do not know, I would just briefly explain what is an HUF. So the HUF, or the Hindu Undivided Family, is a creation of law which comes into existence the moment a Hindu is born. Okay, it is created by the application of the Hindu Succession Act, and it is also recognized by the Income Tax Act. Okay. So the Hindu Succession Act, as Sir also mentioned, is applicable to Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. Okay. So these are the 4 communities to which HUF laws are applicable. Now, Section 64 of the Income Tax Act, is a clubbing provision whereby in my lifetime, if I want to transfer any of my assets to my Hindu undivided family, the clubbing provisions are invoked, and whatever income is generated out of those assets will again be taxed in my hands. So it doesn't solve any purpose to transfer those assets to my HUF while I'm still alive. But if I transfer my assets to the HUF, to my son's HUF or to my grandson's HUF, to their Hindu undivided family, through my will, all these assets are transferred without the taxing implication, because I am no longer there. So there is no question of the clubbing provision of Section 64 applying. Now, what is the benefit to the beneficiary who's receiving this? So as I said, that the HUF, the Hindu undivided family, is also recognized by the Income Tax Act. And an HUF enjoys similar benefits as an individual does. It has the same basic exemption of 2,50,000 or 3 lakh in the case the Karta is a senior citizen, or 5 lakh in case he's a super senior citizen. The HUF also enjoys all the deductions and all the exceptions which are given by the income tax law to an individual. So instead of transferring property to your son, who may already be in the 20% or the 30% tax bracket, and increasing the tax outgo, you instead transfer your income yielding assets, something like a property which has rental income, something like FDs which has interest income, something like shares which has dividend income, which is now taxable beyond a certain threshold, and even the capital gains from the selling of those shares. So these kind of income yielding properties could be transferred to the Hindu undivided family of your son or your sons or your grandsons to reduce the tax outgo to the beneficiary. That is one way how we can take mitigate, or you can say that we can cost optimize the transfer to the beneficiary. Any questions so far? Anybody has any questions which I can take up immediately? If there's any clarity anybody seeks over here. You can even transfer. Okay. Yes, one can be. I can read a question. Can one be Karta and 2 HUFs? Yes, you can be a Karta and 2 HUFs. One could be your father's HUF when you are a major son. In case your father has his own Hindu undivided family, and you are the elder son in the family, by the application of the Hindu Succession Act, automatically the elder son becomes the Karta of the HUF. And you may have an HUF in your individual capacity, which is you, your wife, and your sons could form another HUF. And so you could be an HUF, you could be a Karta in your father's HUF as well as a Karta in your own HUF.
There's one more question that is.
Yeah. Does an HUF entity, can you please read out the question, Nidhi?
Does a HUF entity begin when born or when married?
The HUF entity begins, or it comes into creation when a child is born, and but it can only be, I would say, it gets legal existence under the Income Tax Act only after one gets married. So how you can use this loophole is you transfer the assets to your unmarried sons or to your unmarried grandsons. Okay, ensure that the assets which are transferred are not yielding any taxable income till the time he gets married, or the income is less than the exemption limit, so that there is no tax implication in the hands of the unmarried son or the unmarried, I would say, unmarried son or unmarried grandsons. And the moment he gets married, he can enjoy the benefits and exemptions given by the Income Tax Act in his Hindu undivided family capacity.
So one question here is, HUF is only the eldest son or eldest daughter also can be a HUF?
After the amendment of the Hindu Succession Act applicable from the 6th of September 2005, the law has given equal right to the daughters as to the sons. So the daughters have the similar rights from birth as the sons, and the eldest daughter can definitely become the karta in the case of demise of her father.
Can a Bengali family form a HUF?
Yes, they can form an HUF, but they have a different rule, which is a Dayabhaga law. So only in Assam and West Bengal, you have a law which is a Dayabhaga school of, the HUF, whereas in the rest of the country, the Mitakshara law applies. But we'll not get into the details of those because that is not so correlated to the will part of the thing which we are doing right now.
So can a Karta give the entire property to HUF to one member in the HUF, alienating the other members?
No, because in the HUF, the right is acquired by birth. So the moment somebody is born in a Hindu family, he has an interest or he acquires a co-parsonary right in the HUF. Now let us understand what is a co-parsonary right. When a man, his wife and his children are the members are form an HUF, the man himself and his children, the man is a karta and the children are the co-parsoners, whereas his wife is a member of the HUF. So in the event that the person dies, his wife and his children have an equal right in the property of the HUF. They have an equal right. His wife has an equal right as equal that of his son. So if he has 2 sons and 1 daughter and 1 wife, all the 4 of them have an equal right, 1/4 share each in the property of the HUF. But it is only the co-parsoners, that is the son and the daughters, who can actually demand the partition of the HUF. Okay. So you cannot say that the karta can give away everything to one single person. He cannot buy it because by law, everyone acquires right in the property of the HUF through birth.
Does the HUF entity continue even after demise of the karta?
Yes, it does continue even after demise of the karta. Even if he survived by a daughter and if he survived by his wife, even then the HUF entity continues. There is no requirement that there has to be a male member in the HUF for the HUF to continue, especially after the amendment of the Hindu Succession Act in 2005.
So one more question here is, does a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law has the same right and say in HUF?
Daughter-in-law and son-in-law?
Has the same
The
right.
daughter-in-law and son-in-law do not have the same rights. The son-in-law has absolutely no rights in the HUF. The rights in the HUF are created by birth. So for example, I have you. Okay. For example, if there's an HUF created by a person through ancestral property or through a gift received by maybe his father, maybe his great-grandfather, or maybe his grandfather, there are 3 generations in which he can receive the gift and create his own Hindu undivided family. Nidhi, what was the question exactly? Son-in-law and daughter-in-law, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the sons, so as I told you that you need to get married in order to start a legal HUF, to get the status of an HUF in the Income Tax Act. The moment children are born, they acquire a right in the HUF because in the Hindu Succession Act, the right is given by birth. The moment the children have children, those grandchildren also get a right in the HUF by birth. But such similar rights are not given to the daughter-in-law and the son-in-law. Though they have a share in the HUF, the daughter-in-law has a share in the HUF, the son-in-law can never demand a share in the HUF. It is only the children of the daughter who have a share in the HUF and not the son-in-law.
So like you said, like after demise, the HUF continues.
Yes.
So how and when does it end?
When the co-partner calls for a total partition of the HUF. In this case, it can be the daughter, it can be the sons. They can mutually decide to partition the HUF. No partial partition is allowed. It has to be a total partition, after which equal shares to all the co-partners and the members are given and the HUF comes to an end.
So Sunita, this question you can answer.
What if we have 2 daughters? Should we make a will?
If you are not having any legal heirs, then also you can make a will to decide how your legacy should go to the persons of your loved ones who cared about you. So it's not necessary that will is to be executed only when legal heirs are there. You can execute will basically is executed to bequeath whatever we have according to our will. So you can execute if you don't have any legal heirs, or if you have 1 daughter, 2 daughter, or any number of legal heirs.
Okay, so back to Rajshri. Sorry, we have these questions
That's okay.
coming up. So, one question is like, as my grandfather is no more now, can my father be Karta of my GFs, HUF, and his own HUF?
Yes, he can be. As I answered earlier, you can be an HUF since his father is the elder son. He can be the Karta of his, his grandfather's HUF as well as the Karta of his own HUF. And that is exactly how HUF is such a beautiful tax planning tool, which is a legal one given to us by law.
Okay, Rajshri, does my brother, sister become a Karta of my father's HUF after my death?
I'm sorry, Rajshri. Can you please come again?
Does my brother, sister become a Karta of my father's HUF after my death?
He being the elder of the siblings.
Yes, the other elder person can become the elder. I mean, the elder of his siblings, whether the daughter or the brother. I mean, the son or the brother or the sister. Whoever is eldest next to him becomes the Karta of the HUF.
So our next question would be, we have just 2 more questions, Rajshri, to ask you. What are various types of trustees?
Trustees?
Yes.
I'm just coming to that. If you're done with HUF, the second part of the tax planning would be trusts.
Okay.
So now before we go ahead, what is a trust? A trust is basically something which is reposed by a settler or an author in the trustee to carry on, or to manage his wealth in the manner in which he has mentioned in the trust deed. So first of all, the trust deed is, it is Indian Trusts Act 1882, okay, where we have essentially 4 parties. The author or the settler of the trust is the person who is making the trust. Second is the beneficiary. It is the person in whose favor or for whose benefit the trust is created. Third is the trustee. It is the person in whom the author or the settler of the trust is reposing his faith to carry on the trust according to his wishes. In certain circumstances, the author himself can be the trustee. Okay, and the fourth would be the property of the trust. That is the person, the property, the immovable property or the cash or whatever, be the immovable property or immovable property, which is made the corpus of the trust. So these are the 4 aspects of the trust. Now, trusts can be made without will also. But what is the benefit of creating a trust through a will? So now, before I go ahead, there are 2 different kinds of trusts. One is a specific trust and one is a discretionary trust. So specific trust, as the name suggests, is a trust where the beneficiaries are known and their shares are known. For example, if I have 3 children and I want that each of them should get equal rights in the property of the trust, in the benefit of whatever income is generated by the trust, or if I want it to be 40-40-20 and I have specified that in the trust deed that these are the 3 beneficiaries and this is the proportion in which I want them to get the benefit out of the income of the trust, this is called a specific trust. Now, there could be situations where I'm having a huge property. I'm just giving an example. There could be so many. I'm holding a huge property and I don't wish to give it to any one particular, son or daughter. I want that particular property should be enjoyed by all the children and grandchildren born in my family. So here, the concept of a discretionary trust comes into picture, where I form a discretionary trust. I say that this property is for the benefit of all the members of my family or all my children and grandchildren. Okay, and it is a discretion of the trustee to give money to each, I would say, beneficiary as per his requirement. For example, I have 3 children, A, B, and C, and now A needs money for his education. It is the discretion of the trustee that for his studies, A may get more money out of the trust than B and C. Then it may so happen further some years down the line that B has a marriage lined up in his family. So again, the trustee can take a discretion that, he is giving more benefit to B than A and C. So this is a concept of a discretionary trust where either the beneficiaries are not specified or the share in which they will receive the benefit is not specified. In either circumstances, it is considered as a discretionary trust. Now, what is the tax planning part of it? Through a will. Now, under section 164, if we form a discretionary trust, it is taxable at the maximum marginal rate, which could be something like 37% or 42% under the current rates which are applicable, which is the maximum marginal rate applicable to an individual, which is 30%, plus surcharge, which could be anywhere between 25% to 37%, and surcharge at the rate of 4%. So put together, if we form a discretionary trust which is not made through a will, the income could be taxable at the rate of 37% to 42%, which is definitely very high. Okay. But if the same discretionary trust is formed through a will, it is chargeable at the rates applicable to an individual. That is the slab rates. It enjoys the same basic exemption of 2,50,000, then 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. It is taxable in the same manner as an individual. So that is how the wills can be used for forming a discretionary trust and bringing down the tax implication on the beneficiaries. Okay. Another thing about specific trust is Section 56, subsection 2, clause 10 states that if any specific trust is made where the beneficiary is other than a relative, then whatever amount is transferred to that particular trust will be taxable in the hands of a trust. For example, if I have a friend of my father whom I want to support throughout his life, okay, and I create a trust for him, which is not created through will, and I transfer some XYZ amount of money to the trust, the entire amount which I transfer to the trust for the support of that friend But if the same specific trust is formed through a will, if the same specific trust is formed through a will, am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes.
If the same specific trust is formed through a will, the condition of having only relatives as the beneficiaries is removed, and it can be made for the benefit of anybody other than the relative also. Another thing is that, you may have some business assets. When you're creating a will, you may have some business assets like, any partnership firms, or, you may be a part of a private limited company, or you may have businesses in these forms. So you may want that these businesses should continue for the benefit of your family and not just for the benefit of a particular son or daughter or a particular relative. Again, in that case, you can use a discretionary trust. You can have a discretionary trust which is carrying on the business. Now, if this kind of a trust is created not through a will, again, it is taxable at the maximum marginal rate, which is again the 37% or the 42% which we discussed. But when this discretionary trust, which carries on business, is formed through a will, is created through a will, the income tax rates come down to those applicable to an individual. So these are some of the ways in which you can do some tax planning through estate planning. But I would like to put a disclaimer here, as we have in these TV serials that they are not taken from any real life person. I would like to put a disclaimer here that there is no one size fits all solution for an estate planning. It has to be a tailor-made solution based on your priorities. For someone, it may be more about tax planning. For others, it may be more about their wealth reaching the right people in their family in the right manner. It has to be a very tailor-made solution which has to be created. The estate planning should ideally be done with the help of a professional or with the help of your chartered accountant or maybe some other professional who has an expertise in the area, so that whatever objectives you want are achieved through the estate planning, and your beneficiaries are benefited through all the hard work that you have put in in all these years for creating a legacy for your loved ones. Another way to transfer these assets is by creating a trust for your unborn persons. Just as Honorable Justice Sir had mentioned about family trust, so you can also create a family trust through your will. Now, a trust created for unborn persons. Unborn persons could be your would-be son, would-be daughter, would-be son-in-law, would-be daughter-in-law, would again become a discretionary trust, which is normally taxable at a maximum marginal rate. But if this trust for unborn persons is created through a will, again, it has the benefit of the exception under Section 164, whereby it gets taxed under the slab rates applicable to individuals.
Okay,
Any
Raj.
questions?
Yeah.
Rajshri,
I hope it has not gone bonkers and something is registered.
There's one question on the chat.
Yeah.
Who are the members of HUF if daughter becomes Karta?
The member of the HUF is the wife of the person who created the HUF. So technically, there are three parties to an HUF: the Karta, the member, and the co-pastor. The Karta is a person who created the HUF, or may have, have become the Karta due to because the demise of his father, and he's the eldest person, so he has become the Karta of the HUF. The Karta is a person who has the right to take all the decisions regarding the HUF, who's responsible for all the, the running of the business or the filing of the returns. It is the Karta who's responsible legally for the management of the HUF. And second comes the member, which is the wife of the Karta or the mother of the Karta. And then come the co-partners who have acquired a right in the HUF through birth. I hope that makes it clear. Yeah.
How to make a trust through a will? This would be the last question.
You can create a trust through a will by, by mentioning in the in your will that you want a trust created for so and so purpose. You can also appoint a okay. Here, this is an excellent question, but I would like to say that when you're creating a trust through a will, you have to express a desire in the will where you say that you want a trust to be created for so and so purpose. It will be the executor of the will, since it is happening after your death. It is the executor of the trust. The executor of the will who is actually going to form the trust. You're only going to mention in the will that you want a trust created, for what purpose you want to create it, what all conditions you want to put in the creation of the trust. All that can be elaborately specified in the will. But the actual creation of the trust, since it's happening after the demise of the person, will be taken care of by the executor. Now here, it is important that the trustee that you appoint is a person you trust. Okay, the trustee of the trust is a person you trust. It could, and in today's time, we also have something, the concept of a corporate trustee. Okay, because under section 160, the liability of the trustee of the trust is unlimited. He is responsible to the law for all the, following of the law, for filing of the tax returns, for paying the taxes. Since it is the trustee who is responsible for all these things, and sometimes individuals may not be willing to take that kind of responsibility. And also comes a question of perpetuity. What happens if the trustee expires? What happens if when he dies? So in order to address those questions, there's a concept of corporate trustee, where a company acts as a trustee. So company has perpetual succession. There is no, there's no question of the person dying and things coming to an end, or, you scouting for another trustee. So in that way, company has perpetual succession. So there's perpetuity and there is limited liability. So, family members amongst themselves could elect some people as the board of directors. They could form a trustee company under the Companies Act. They could, appoint some people in the family to act as trustees in the best interest of the trust. And the people would be more willing to act as trustees because there is limited liability in the form of a corporate structure.
So, Rajshri, thank you so much. And we would like to end this session. It's been actually, we are over time now.
Yeah, it's gone for a long time.
So
thank you everybody for a very patient hearing.
Yeah, thank you. So, so let me give you a vote of thanks, and also to Sunita. So Rajshri, your dynamic personality, you made the whole planning of this session more easier with your invaluable insight and knowledge. You are such a joy to work with. Every interaction with you is a positive one, and I wish you have big things ahead of you. Thank you, Rajshri.
Thank you so much, White Aura. Thank you so much, Nidhi.
And Sunita, for you, you are a dear friend and a friend. You have the best of talent, skills, and attitude that add up to a great performance. Thank you for a smooth conduct of this session. No matter what project you are tackling, you always bring invaluable insight and motivation to the task. May you be proud of the work you do, the person you are, and the difference you make. So ladies, a big shout out to you ladies. You gave us your time, the most thoughtful gift of all. Thank you audience for being there with your time and patience. We hope you take a lot lot from this session.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Rajshri. In fact, the privilege is mine to be on this platform, and I could be a part of this session, which was very good and very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.